right, this is Unit 1, Module 4, the emergence of rock and roll. Well, let's talk a little bit about this crossovers and covers, what that means. The pop, country and western, and rhythm blues markets all coexisted in the 50s as three separate distinct markets. And the crossovers are records that basically start originally in one market and then go to another one. And usually you try to get to the pop market because that's usually where the most of the money is at in there. In the mid-50s and late 50s, the youth starts to have more money. Again, the economy is kind of booming at this point here. And so you have a little more disposable income to buy records or whatever, cars or whatever else you kind of want. And this image, this rebel image comes about. And you think of movies like Rebel Without a Cause or The Blackboard Jungle in there. Kids wanted to do their own thing and listen to their own music. And as I mentioned in the last one, is that if you were a kid, you pretty much were listening to the same music your folks were listening to. So now when rock and roll comes around, that changes greatly. Well, let's talk about a couple artists that kind of goes along with this crossovers. And one is Bill Haley and the Comets. His career went both pop, country western, and rhythm and blues. And the song "Rock Around the Clock," which I'm sure you probably heard before, was in the Blackboard Jungle, and this blows up in the charts. And he was a success all over the world. I think he was probably even a bigger success in Europe than he was in America in a lot of ways. So he had a lot of various hits: "Shake, Rattle, and Roll," "See You Later, Alligator." But check out "Shake, Rattle, and Roll" by him. Now, in contrast, maybe check out "Shake, Rattle, and Roll" by Joe Turner and see the original rhythm and blues version of it, and then the version that Bill Haley does. So if you listen to the Bill Haley version of it, his cover of the song, he changed some of the more lurid lyrics into it, made it where it was a little bit more palatable towards the market, where you could play it on the pop radio stations and so forth. So it took out some of the terms that were just not going to work on regular radio, and leave some in, maybe like one, like I'm like a one-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it must mean something, I guess. Haley's version also it's a little bit more big band arrangement, kind of more to this pop music type sound. But if you listen to the guitar solo in there, and there's some good guitar work going on. And of course, "Rock Around the Clock." If you're a guitar player, you pretty much need to know how to play that guitar solo. So check that out. And of course, that tune just changed things. And again, compare and contrast that with the pop music I play for you. How much is that "Doggy in the Window"? And then you hear this song by Bill Haley, "Rock Around the Clock," or "Shake, Rattle, and Roll." And it's got this groove factor. It makes you want to move to the beat and have that pulse going on. You can just imagine how the kids just love that and sort of just inspired by that. And one kid that was inspired by all this music, and of course, is Elvis Presley. And we could talk for hours and hours about Elvis Presley. So basically, what I'm giving is a nutshell of this. And basically, when he goes in and records in 1954 in some recording studios, "That's All Right, Mama," and on the backside of that, "Blue Moon in Kentucky," he changes the world. Arthur Big Boy Crudup was the one who did "That's All Right, Mama." Check out the blues version of that, and then "Blue Moon of Kentucky" is the country, well, basically bluegrass, the Bill Monroe version of that. Check that out, and check out Elvis's version. And then it's kind of cool about Elvis's version of it. He actually changes the time from 3, which is Bill Monroe's "Blue Moon of Kentucky," to the more rock and roll 4. So you can see right there with that first record, combination of blues, rhythm and blues, and country and western, right there where that rockabilly sound starts coming about there. And in a lot of ways, "That's All Right" is really considered being the first acknowledged rockabilly record. And you see here the vocal styles, it's sort of similar to the R&B original, and strong country elements in there as well. I mean, the guitar work, the bass, the thump bass, I always think of it as an element of country and western music on there. And Elvis Presley, we can talk forever about him. Basically, he grew up in the virtues of a small town, plied Cern and Mamming, his elders, learned music from the radio and the Pentecostal church. He got a guitar when he was 11, and he tried to emulate gospel and country and blues musicians, which he heard on the radio, and also while living in rural parts of Mississippi. And basically, his family moves to Memphis, and of course, there's a big musical heritage there in music there. And basically, after he graduates high school, he really didn't stand out too much from a crowd in high school, but the next year, things changed greatly. And of course, with "That's All Right, Mama" and "Blue Moon of Kentucky," it's just this changes the world on there. I also have as another example of the covers is Hound Dog, which was originally performed by Big Mama Thornton, and that song went to #1 R&B charts in 1953. And if you listen to her version of it, and then listen to Elvis's version of it, you can again see how a lot of the metaphors are gone in Elvis's version. His song is literally about a dog. Her version is about the slow down gigolo that she's kicking out, and so forth. So if you listen to that, you can hear those elements in there. And Elvis's version is definitely a little more rocked out in a lot of ways. Non-threatening, and it could get played on the pop radio at the time. And yes, could Big Mama Thornton's version get played on it? No. If you listen to it, and again, we're thinking back in the mid-50s, there was some music that was not going to ever get played on pop music. And my analogy is like if you're listening to a hip-hop station, they're not going to play country and western on that. And vice versa, on a country western station, they're not going to play any rap music on that station. This is not going to happen. At this point in the 50s, right or wrong, some music was never going to get played on the pop radio stations. So there it is. Elvis, in a lot of ways, was unique. And the thing about Elvis that I like to talk about as being the central figure of rock and roll music is that with him, he was able to absorb all this music, synthesize all this music into rock and roll. So what he heard from the church, when he heard from the blues musicians, when he heard from the radio stations that he listened to, he's able to synthesize into his own style of music. In a lot of ways, I kind of compare Elvis to Bach. Bach was a classic, a Baroque period composer, and he didn't really leave his home very much. But he got scores from all over Europe, and he would study them, and he'd write out transcriptions for the organ. And so when you listen to his music sounds a lot more cosmopolitan than just a little area of Germany that he was in. Elvis is the same way. His music sounds a lot more grander in scope and combines the best of this element here, best of rhythm and blues, best of country and western, best of pop, and combines it together to give this really incredible sound. So he was able to do that. And the Sun records, some of the Elvis fans think that the Sun recordings are the best and the only recordings they actually want to listen to. The Colonel Tom Parker came around and purchased his contract from the Sun for $40,000, and basically was able to go out there and push Elvis a lot further on there. Elvis was inducted into the Army in 1958, and drafted basically. And sadly, his mom passed away that same year. And then at this point, after he gets out, he does some various movies. G.I. Blues pops to be one of his big hit movies. And in the late 60s, he really wasn't seen very much. And they had this '68 comeback special, and Elvis wasn't quite sure. It's been like 10 years since he was a major star in his mind, and the audiences just loved him. And of course, in the late 60s and 70s and so forth, he played, and he had various weight and drug problems going on. And sadly, Elvis died of a heart-related problem in '77 at 42 years old. And the importance of Elvis, he was the king of rock and roll in a lot of ways because he was the musical personification of what rock and roll was. He was multiple things to multiple people in there. And Elvis' commercial success was overwhelming. It really, really was. A couple of tunes I have on there to go check out. Jailhouse Rock would be one. Goes to Don't Be Cruel, Suspicious Minds. All of those some great examples of Elvis, and as well as some of the early examples. That's All Right, Mama. And if you listen to Blue Moon, Kentucky, I think that's one of my favorites. I love that cover. And we'll talk some more about some more of the rock and rollers that came after Elvis. So as always, rock and roll.